there's an evil entity in the house.
You are about to see real people.
I was terrified beyond belief.
Reliving horrifying paranormal encounters for the first time.
I truly felt it was like living in hell.
When ghost children come out to play.
That picture turned out to be very evil.
I buried this for nearly 30 years.
Be prepared to be afraid.
We purchased our property in 1998, and we tore down the old home place and built ours in September of '99. I quit my job as a draftsman that I had been working for almost 11 years and quit to stay at home and raise my little man. Jeremy was about 2 years old when he could really start articulating his words. I'd go back and I said, "What are you doing, bub?" And he said, "Playing with EY." And I said, "Who's EY?" "My friend." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so I had been told by many friends that had children that they have imaginary friends. I'd be like, "Okay, what's Eli look like?" "He has the same color hair as Aunt Tam, which is a natural blonde. My sister's a very blonde. He has eyes your color, so blue eyes, I would assume." He said, "And he wears belts on his shoulders." I said, "That's pretty descriptive, you know?" And he's like, "He's my friend." I thought it was a normal result of an only child.
But Mandy was about to discover there was nothing ordinary about Eli.
That day, my son was at school, and I was home alone, cleaning house, doing my normal mommy chores. And I heard this just little laugh. It was plain as day. And I thought, and you know, I'm like, did I just hear that? Of course, nothing's there. I didn't know if it was paranormal or if it was my brain.
And Mandy's doubts would be tested again just a few nights later.
It was a normal weeknight. My husband was in bed next to me. He was already asleep. My son was in bed. Mommy. And right in my right ear, on this side of the bed, it would sound like a small child saying, "Mommy." I was terrified. And I was just like, what's my son doing up? What's Jeremy doing up? You know, I do the whole, what are you doing awake? And he's not there. I did downplay a lot of it because I just figured that, hey, unless I have concrete evidence, unless I have it in front of me, it doesn't exist.
Mandy became more worried when she started to hear adult voices too.
On several occasions when I would be at home alone, I would hear what sounded like muffled conversations between a male and a female, almost as in an argument. And I'd hear footsteps down the hallway. something in my son's room. He had this little toy piano. I would hear playing music. I felt like I was losing my mind. My husband would come home from work. I would tell him these things and he'd just, roll the eyes and be like, you know what? Your son's at school all day, you're alone, your brain's creating these noises. I said, you're probably right. I have an old German wooden music box. And I'd hear it play. And I'd go in and the lid would be open on my dresser. I know that that lid can't open on its own. You have to open the hinge of the music box to get it to play. Nobody was believing me. My husband just thought I was a nut job. And, my son quit having experiences. He was already at the age of where nothing was really happening to him anymore. And I thought, why am I still hearing this stuff? So I was grasping at straws. I was looking for any way to get rid of it. Just lashed out one day.
Show yourself! Show yourself!
There stood a boy, about 4 or 5 years old. Exactly what my son described. I just saw the kid that my son described as Eli. I'm thinking, is this possible? Is this even possible? And I was so torn with it. I was so scared. So many questions unanswered. I need to know who this kid is. I need to know why he's here and how did he die? Started looking up deed records for the property. The family that lived there in the 1860s and 1870s was in fact the Derenberger family. They had came here from Germany. They had 13 children. Notice 5 of the children had died on the property from being beat. They had neck and head trauma. Started going through the children's names. Elijah Derenberger. Went by Eli Derenberger. I was floored. I had, concrete evidence in front of me of what had actually happened on my property.
Child spirits are more likely to stay earthbound after traumatic death, such as a murder, because they're not really sure where they are at the time of death, and it's really difficult for them to cross over. They're not really sure of the process needed. Basically, child spirits are also still looking for their parents. They're looking for their loved ones, and when they cross over after a traumatic death like that, they're unable to find their family. So oftentimes they're wandering and looking for an answer or solution on where their family is.
Dealing with the spirit of little Eli had been traumatic enough for Mandy, but nothing could have prepared her for what happened next.
My husband had went to work, son was at school, and I go into the bathroom to get a shower.
Mandy Joyce had uncovered historical documents that appeared to prove the existence of her son's imaginary friend.
Show yourself!
But things were about to get worse.
I go into the bathroom to get a shower. Spirits knocking stuff off the bathroom shelves. And I just kept getting more fear. I was so scared. I was praying. I was praying to God. I was like, God, just get me through this. And there stands the silhouette of this man. He had a big, tall hat, but he was all black. And I throw my hair up in a towel, I throw on some pajama bottoms, and he drove me out of my house that day.
When somebody leaves a home or abandons their house because there's a haunting going on, it's possible that the spirit kind of gains power from that situation. At least psychologically, they feel that they've won in that scenario. It's believed that the best thing to do when you have a haunting is to stay in the home, not to surrender your property and your life to the spirit, but to confront that and perform a house blessing and remove the haunting.
I went to my friend's house and I was scared. I cried all the way into town. And she said, you need to cleanse. She said, get a hold of Jackie, you need to cleanse ASAP.
When I go into a place, sometimes like pictures pop into my head and I just would see like certain things whenever I'd walk through her house. The energy just hit you. It was so heavy and just, you could tell that there was something. You always felt like something was watching you, or if you walked around a corner, something was gonna pop out at you.
She told me that there was a man.
You know, you could tell that that man was not nice. The father was not a good person.
That was very stern and ruled with an iron fist. She smudged with the smoke. We went to every room, every corner of the house.
And as we moved through the house, it just got heavier and heavier, the energy. And once we moved from the upstairs to the downstairs, I could feel him there. I knew he was down there. And once we got down there, I just wanted to warn him, let him know this is what's happening. He's somewhere around here and he's not happy, that he's pissed that we're doing this.
I saw this the same black wispy mist that I saw in this figure in my bathroom. And the whole time I'm just saying the Lord's Prayer. I'm saying a prayer over my home. I'm saying a prayer over my son and my husband. I saw it lunge out, like as a hand.
I had her help me to yell at it and tell it it's leaving now. And then finally it just, it's like a bubble pops and it just lifts. Everything lifts and it's very light and everything is just gone and quiet.
I learned that spirits are very real, that not all spirits are nice. I learned that if you think it's there, you're not crazy.
It may be hard to believe, but Mandy got away lightly. At least the ghost of a murdered child in her home did not physically harm Mandy or her family. Frank Madrid cannot say the same of his experience.
Sticks.
Because my dad was in the Navy, we ended up in National City.
National City is a city that's close to San Diego, kind of like Victorian houses, but small. And, you know, everything there I remember was just old. It had a good creep factor to it. One day I was riding my bike and I saw this little boy of this house that was on the corner. So I just rode over there and said hi to him, and we started talking, and he was kind of lonely and scared. He was very quiet, very introverted. The house that he lived in, all the doors were boarded up. It was kind of strange. We didn't really think anything of it. And then to hear the laughter of this little kid.
In 1967, Frank Madrid's family had just moved to a new city.
Making friends after you're moving around a lot is, it's kind of hit and miss.
Our father was in the Navy, and we moved around. Frank was born on the other side of the country in Virginia.
I had no friends in the neighborhood. One day I was riding my bike, and I saw this little boy of this house that was on the corner. So I just rode over there and said hi to him, and we started talking, and I thought he was a friendly kid. I thought he was kind of lonely and scared for some reason. He was very quiet, very introverted. Said our goodbyes. I went back home. And the next day I'm riding my bike and I see him again, so went over and started talking to him.
Our father was gone a lot, and everyone else was younger than he was. So he kind of latched onto the first friend that he could make, wanting so desperately to have somebody to socialize with, to play with. You know, I believe it got very intense very quickly.
And after a while of talking to him, a few days, you know, he started lightening up, and you know, we'd make each other laugh, and you know, it was kind of like a normal child relationship, you know. We would play and laugh.
Frank enjoyed having a new friend, even one who seemed a little strange.
I never saw him pick up anything. He would just use his fingers for guns and stuff, and I had plastic ones, and he never would touch those. There were some times where I'd bring some toys over so we could play, but he would never, ever grab any of them. He wouldn't play with them. He just seemed to be kind of scared. Not, you know, I think he was, it almost kind of seemed like he was afraid that his parents would find out that he was playing with me or my toys. So that's the kind of impression I got from him. But being as young as I was, I really didn't pay attention to it because I didn't want to lose my friend. You know, I didn't want to cause any kind of problems.
Nevertheless, it was becoming increasingly obvious to Frank that his new friend had something to hide.
You know, you get tired and work up a sweat and get hot and thirsty and, you know, just nonchalantly, hey, can I get a drink of water? No. Why can't I have a drink of water? Well, you can't go in the house. Well, why can't I go in the house? Because my parents aren't allowing anybody in the house. I go, well, can you go get me a drink of water? No. Well, why not? Because I can't go in the house right now. So, you know, this is really confusing to a little kid. You know, I want a drink of water, you won't get it for me. You know, you kind of get a little upset, you know. Well, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna get my own drink of water.
The argument over the glass of water had an immediate impact on the boys' friendship.
Things did change after that. He was more withdrawn into himself, and he didn't really laugh anymore. We couldn't just have fun like we were having fun before. One day, went over there to play, and, you know, so the first time in a long time, he was excited because He told me, I found something. Well, what'd you find? Well, I found an axe over here. So we went over there and he showed me where he found this old, small hatchet. And I remember it being just, really old and ancient and rusty and just, laying there, half buried in the dirt. He told me to, pick it up. Let's go chop something. I said, no, I'm not gonna pick it up. And he kind of got upset and he was, really forceful. He picked the thing up. Let's go over here and chop some wood. To appease his request, it's like, okay, pick it up. And followed him over to this little log that was laying there. And he's telling me to chop it. And I'm thinking, I better not, Why don't you chop it? He goes, I can't. Well, why can't you? I just can't. So I said, all right, I'll chop it. So I got the axe and
It was 1967 in National City, California, when young Frank Madrid made a new friend. But his new buddy had started acting very oddly.
Why don't you chop it? He goes, I can't. Well, why can't you? I just can't. So I said, all right, I'll chop it. So I got the axe and the tip of the axe hit the dirt and the gravel and the wood, and I had some gravel fly up into my eye. Immediately, everything went white with big globs of red. I ran home screaming because I couldn't see out of my eye anymore. The one thing that I remember that I won't ever forget was the horrible laughter that he was laughing when I was running home screaming. And that laughter followed me all the way home. When I got home, my folks took me to the hospital, and I'd had 9 major operations on it and 4 minor ones after that. They didn't have the technology that they do these days, so they really couldn't reattach the retina.
The incident left Frank blind in his right eye for the rest of his life.
Are you comfortable taking your glasses off and talking about it? Because
I can't see you, but there I am. So, how about this? Plastic.
When I would hear about Frank's accident, it always was centered around this boy on the corner.
I mean, there's just so many things that I couldn't understand at the time because I was too young. And you think about things that happened. The clothing that he wore, red and white striped shirt, blue jeans rolled up at the cuffs, and the black high-top tennis shoes with the white balls on the side. This kid, all the days that I've seen him, those are the same clothes he wore all the time. The house that he lived in, nobody lives there. It's abandoned. My childhood friend, this kid that nobody else could see but me, was a spirit kid.
Children haven't been conditioned by their parents or society to not believe in the paranormal. Well, it's part of their reality, basically. Child spirits, when they're dealing with human children, really come across as valid and legitimate. They don't seem to be a spirit, and the children are very open-minded and accepting of them.
He was very open to it. He was, I mean, I don't want to use the word desperate because it sounds negative, but in this situation, it makes sense that he was desperate to make a friend, to have some kind of companionship there in a place where he knew nobody.
I think the little boy died in that house, and I think the parents were so distraught about it that they moved away.
And his energy is still there, his soul, his spirit, however you want to say it. So he went to what was familiar, and what was familiar was that house.
I never went back to the house, to his house, to see if he was there or not. I wanted to stay away from that place. I didn't want nothing to do with him or anything. I mean, that laughter was still in my head, and there was no way that, you know, to this day, I can't forget it.
Many years later, Frank had another paranormal encounter.
It seemed like we had met before. I go to talk to him, and as I'm talking to him, he starts to fade, and I can see through him, and then he just vanishes right before my eyes. Just gone. Very well could be the little boy on the corner as a man.
It's possible that the child spirit aged somehow on the other side and returned to visit him to show him that, you know, here I am, I've grown up with you, and it's good to see you again type of scenario. But it's also possible that that child spirit maybe had another spirit go and visit him in an adult form because it was more socially acceptable or understandable.
This gentleman was just standing there in the middle of the road there and looking directly at Frank. There was some knowledge of who he was. Since their childhood friendship was so intense that there would have been more. If the axe incident was intentional, I would expect that person to say, gotcha. And if it was unintentional, and if it was just a fluke, then I would also expect to say, I'm really sorry that that happened to you, and not just faded away as he got close. There's just too much unfinished business there. That's kind of an evil thing to do.
Frank will never forget this episode of his life. His injury reminds him of his ghostly friend every day.
When people tell you ghosts can't hurt you, they can cause and affect harm to you. That'll haunt me as far as, you know, as long as I live. It's just something like that.
The presence of the spirits of dead children should never be ignored. They are often the first sign that a portal to the spirit world has been opened.
Mark.
My husband had lost his job due to a back injury. I was diagnosed a long time ago with Crohn's disease, but I'd gotten really sick, couldn't work anymore. We needed a place to stay, so we decided we'd take the house. It used to be what they called veterans housing. We had our first son together. His name is Jordan. When we moved into the house, the first thing I remember is we couldn't get our mattress up the stairs. It was too narrow of an area. We had to sleep all on the sofa bed. I woke up to smelling like flowers, like roses. I'm a Christian, and it was always said that if you smell flowers or roses, it could be the Holy Spirit. So I tried to maybe think it was something like that, but it didn't feel refreshing because it smelled more like when you go to a funeral home, like death. It reminded me of death. It was very uneasy. It was uneasy that I made the statement all the time that I don't feel like this is our home. I can't put my finger on, I just couldn't figure it out what it was about the house.
The family had not been living in the house long before Dawn noticed Jordan was displaying some disturbing behavior.
Jordan was playing on the stairs inside the hallway. At the bottom of the stairs was a rocking chair. Jordan got in the chair and would swing back and forth and say, "Baby hurt, baby hurt, baby hurt, baby hurt," over and over again. And I'd say, "Jordan, what do you mean by that?" "Baby hurt, baby hurt." And he said, "The baby got hurt." He said, "Yeah, there's a little girl standing there at the top of the stairs." And I had no idea what he was talking about. "Baby hurt, baby hurt." And I said, "I don't see her." He said, "Look, Mama, there's Allie." Allie was my neighbor's daughter that passed away. I had heard about my neighbor's daughter probably about a month after living there. She had died at 4. She was only 4 years old. It was just some sort of weird virus and medication, but she had died in the house. Jordan did not know who she was or her name. "Baby hurt, baby hurt." There was no way that he knew, but that wasn't the first time he told me things that there was no way he could possibly know.
With Jordan's behavior on her mind, Dawn confided in a new friend.
She had ended up telling me that she was into witchcraft. She started to say to me, "Well, maybe if you use tarot cards, you can get some answers." She gave me a book and she gave me the cards. And I took them home and I started playing with them. I would ask questions to the cards. I just kept wondering if, he was really seeing Allie, what he was really seeing.
It can be dangerous for people to use spiritual divination tools such as tarot if they don't have the knowledge or know-how and how to use these items. You can open doorways, hauntings can begin, entities can come through and actually attach themselves to the people that are using these tools.
Dawn's dabbling with the tarot cards seemed to make the situation worse.
With Jordan, his room was very uncomfortable for everybody. Nobody could stay in that room. Jordan didn't want to sleep in that room. One time he told me he saw a whole family. It was a mother, a son, and a daughter with bullet wounds in their head. And then all of a sudden, all those were gone, and the only one there was one he called the man.
Dawn Pierce's family had moved into a new home and immediately started experiencing paranormal activity. Dawn's young son had started seeing the ghost of a child.
Baby hurt, baby hurt.
Then he started seeing other phantoms in his bedroom.
One time he told me he saw a whole family. It was a mother, a son, and a daughter with bullet wounds in their head. And then all of a sudden, all those were gone, and the only one there was one he called the man. And the man wasn't very nice. And the man said some terrible things, and the man told him to tell me horrific things. He says, "The man told me to tell you as long as you live here, he's going to keep you sick and make sure you stay sick." My husband's like, "Why don't you throw a recorder in Jordan's room and see what you get?" So I said, "Okay, that's a good idea." I put the recorder in the room, nobody was home, and I put it on top of a Bible. And when I went and I rewinded my recorder and listened, I heard the worst. I can't even, it still plays. It was like the most blood-curdling thing. I heard it say. It was just like the most evilest thing I've ever heard. Like it's engraved in my brain to this day. It was scary because I'm thinking, what did I do to open these doors?
Terrified, Dawn started looking into ways of protecting her family.
I just kind of learned about some prayers of protection, and one of them was Psalm 91. My son was taking a bath. And all of a sudden, it was like his eyes looked different, like he looked sinister. And he seemed to get like super strong, and it wasn't him. I knew it wasn't him.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not walk. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures.
So I opened the Bible and I started reading Psalm 91. As I did, he started thrashing around in the tub, and he's like, you shut up, you dumb whore, bitch, calling me all kinds of names.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in the green pastures. He leadeth me beside.
And eventually it stopped. It might have been just 1 or 2 minutes, but it seemed like the longest 1 or 2 minutes. And when it broke, he started crying, and he said, Mommy, Mommy, that wasn't me, that wasn't me. When you're trying to protect your child, you do anything to protect them. But when you can't see or physically feel what's attacking them, you feel hopeless and helpless.
At this point, Dawn was desperate to get help for her son.
And at that time, that's when I met Joe.
She was telling us that she believed that her home was haunted and that her son was seeing things and he was talking to spirits. Dawn had mentioned a couple of different smells in the house. Just before a spirit may show up, you will smell a flower of some sort, and it's usually roses and lilacs. Jordan believed that a little spirit, a little female, was speaking to him. A child could relate to a child's spirit. The spirit of the girl that had passed away was trying to come through, and the only way she could get anybody's attention was to go with somebody that was more on her mentality, more on her wavelength, which would be another child. As the unraveling started and I started asking a bunch of questions, then certain things were like, okay, tarot cards. She had dabbled into a few things, and then everything was starting to get put back into perspective. If somebody is playing with tarot cards, they're divination tools. Those are tools to communicate with those that have passed. A lot of times people just play with cards. Every so often, somebody makes a connection and a door does open. We have this thing in the paranormal that if something comes back, sometimes it can come back 2, 3 times worse than it was originally.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadows of death, I will fear no evil.
It sounded like that's what happened. The game plan was to go find something. If something was there, we would try to pull it out. If not, we'd like to get some sort of evidence, just something to go on to show us that there is something supernatural happening in the home. We spent about, I'd say, a good 4 or 5 hours of investigating. The very last sequence was in the basement. We set up cameras, we set up our video equipment, we took lots of pictures. I didn't have a good feeling going into the basement. I kind of felt, it's almost like when you have the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It was one of those things, and I'm like, you know what? Let's go down here and let's check this out. Initially, I don't like to hit people with prayer right off the bat. I don't want to come off as anybody that's too religious or trying to make something out of nothing.
My shepherd, I shall not walk.
But I felt compelled to pray into the house, into the basement, and that's what we did.
Still waters.
And when Joe had called me about 2 days later and said, I got something to play for you, you're gonna, you know, it's gonna knock your socks off, basically.
At the very end of the tape, just before it ran out, I heard us saying the prayer.
Now a house of Christ. Thank you, Jesus, that you are no longer welcome here, evil spirit. And you know you must obey our commands.
Dawn Pierce's life changed when her son Jordan began seeing the ghost of a child in their home.
Runneth over. Sure.
After unsuccessfully trying to get rid of the spirit herself, Dawn called in professional paranormal investigator Joe Citrone.
At the very end of the tape, just before it ran out, I heard us saying the prayer.
Now a house of Christ. Thank you, Jesus, that you are no longer welcome here, evil spirit. And you know you must obey our commands.
And right during that time, over what we were saying was a loud growl, a human growl that sounded like a mule being kicked.
And you know you must obey our commands.
It was just the most god-awful, loud scream like an animal was being tortured.
And you know you must obey our commands.
It is definitely an inhuman sound that came over that recorder.
But I felt relieved because it validated what we've been going through.
There is something supernatural happening in the home.
Not long after Joe had investigated the home, the Pierce family were spending a normal evening together.
Gonna get you.
My husband, me, and Jordan were in my bedroom. My husband was on the computer. I was laying on the bed with Jordan, and I was reading through the Bible, and I started to read it out loud to him. And he started thrashing around on the bed and hitting me and, you know, yelling obscenities. And I yelled, Mark, come over here, help me. He came over and he was restraining Jordan, and he said to me, just keep reading, just keep going. He was very strong, and then all of a sudden, he just stopped. Cried, and again, you know, explaining that was not him. And I didn't know what to do with Jordan at that point. I was just sitting there frustrated.
And that must be hard for you. You know, were you blaming your son?
I was blaming myself. What did I do to open these doors? I felt like my curiosity maybe opened it, but I knew that there was something there from when we moved in. Things just weren't gonna get any better, and we had had enough. We spent 4 years in the house, so there was a lot of different things that happened. He was young at the time, and I thought maybe he would forget, but he still hasn't forgotten. It was my first child, and
I still blame myself because he has problems with PTSD. And you can't tell a psychiatrist. He wants to tell somebody why he's the way he is. And instead, he has to deal with medication. He'll be 13. But now he's been backed out on sleeping on the couch. He doesn't want to sleep in his own room. After what he's experienced, he wants to go back in my room. He can't sleep without the lights on. He can still hear things. He can't see them. He's become a little bit more closed off, but he's very paranoid, very anxious, a lot of anxiety.
I thank God that we did move. I didn't want to keep living there and live to be tortured every day.